really does make you wonder.
Like whenever we get these great leaders, they come here and after a couple weeks, they're so leaders.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Paul. Hi, everybody. No, that Bill was good there. Oh. So, actually, we like that for you. I might need it.
Yeah, classes are pretty boring, so if you start nodding off, you can just use the phone. Well,
Got a haircut, got a shower cap.
wow.
Here you go. Actually, over your mouth.
Oh, there's you.
Oh, get ready.
I guess somebody checked your baptistry, make sure we still have water.
We do. Okay. We're gonna turn the heater on tonight, but.
I left it on last night, but it was, you can tell it's humid in here.
Oh, okay. Are we gonna turn it on tonight?
Well, you got to do something.
Yeah, you need, it won't, you need to turn it on tonight. It's not going to press the heater.
Okay. It's safe to leave it on.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be, I mean, the heater's always been on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's tied to the pump switch. So if the pump is not running, the heater doesn't run. Okay? So because you want the water to flow, across the heater.
I'll just sit there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Is that clear?
You have to get closer, Ramona. You'll have to get closer. So he can hear you when you object to him.
Oh, okay.
Unless you want to sit here, we'll move up there.
No, that's fine.
So yes, it's tied to the same circuit.
It's loud.
The pump is.
So if it's tied to it, so then the heater and the pump are functioning at the same time.
Right. Because you need to have the water running, otherwise the heater gets too hot and burns itself up. But it's on a timer.
Yeah, I saw that.
And there should be an override so that you can, at least with the old mechanical timer, there was an override so you can turn it off.
Well, I tried to turn off the timer, but it didn't turn it off. So I figured since I don't know how to turn it off, I'll leave it.
Is that the electronic?
The timer doesn't work.
You what?
The timer doesn't work.
The timer's not working. Okay.
Oh. So in other words, when you turn it on, it's
Well,
gonna
that
run,
explains it. Well, Paul, did you get your truck back?
it's gonna run 100%. Right.
Not
Is that
yet.
right then?
Hello? So, I'm having a little problem here today. So, can you guys see me? I need to tilt it up some more.
Is that what pilgrims and pilgrims
Oh.
are strangers in the world?
How can I fix this?
So live your life as strangers, which we just passed.
There it goes. Now you should be right.
We got 30%.
Yeah, well,
Usually that's when it cuts off
when
again.
it's holding up and
No,
after the
that's
seven, it's gonna be a slow
it's
process.
about background. Yeah. When you, as you read through Peter, you're gonna hear him talk about.
All right, do you have me now? Do you see all of me? Okay. So we rebooted the computer back there that we do our Zoom with, and it's had to reinstall, had to update Windows. So we're still updating at 30%, so I had to come up with Plan B. So this is on my phone.
So, yeah, it's a translation thing, but that's what you mean by is the life is changing. In other words, here's just two cents here.
All right. No problem.
Tell you what, I might,
She must be on, yeah. Well, that's a lot of updates to still go.
Like he says, it's Windows 7, and Windows 7 is no longer supported, so I'm trying to figure out where it's getting the updates from.
We're squeezing it from 9 to 7, from 10 to 7. I have no idea.
there, I can see some of you. They can't see you, but that's okay. Restarting. We might get it still.
We might still get it, yeah.
Yep.
Restarting, that's a good sign.
Yeah. I think we might get you back on the computer in a minute, but we're not quite there yet. So if any of you are joining with the live stream, we were having a problem with the Zoom, and I was coming up with Plan B while the computer rebooted, but we might be able to go back to our old method pretty soon here. Well, I've done a good job of chasing off most of the class.
That's usually what I am.
Yeah? Okay. Let me turn some of these mics on. Maybe because remote was coming, they said, I don't want to be a part of that.
Remember how I said about translations?
Good morning, good evening.
Where's your sister?
Well, they're all in Florida, aren't they now?
Oh, Florida.
Yeah, they're watching us right now.
So did you
Like
guys
stalkers.
not get to go to Florida?
I'm going Friday.
That's right.
I still have work until the weekend.
So, the computer is updating. I think it's going. You can join the meeting on your computer, okay?
All right. So I think the Zoom is working. I think the live stream is working. Is that right, Zach? Can you see back there? Live stream? Stage 1 of 4. I'm going to cut this off for right now, okay? You just tell me. All right. You can see it back there, right, Zach? Okay. Just let me know when you're ready to put it on again, and we will do that. All right. For the Zoomers, we had a little problem. Chuck, you'll enjoy this. I turned the computer on back there, the laptop, and it started updating Windows. So we're in the middle of a Windows update, and I have Windows 3.5, so it's going to take a while, I think, for it to work. There was a 3.5, wasn't there?
Yeah, that was back in the late, early 90s,
Yeah, I do remember that. All right, good to have our live streamers with us. Good to have our Zoomers with us. I can see some of you, but not all of you, but that's okay. And the audience here can't see any of you, but I will turn this around so you can see them for a moment. There they are, all waving. Okay. And we might, if we're lucky, the Windows will update quickly, and we can go back to the other way of doing it, okay? So glad to see you guys tonight. Brenda and Anna are on their way to Southern Illinois right now. She has to help with, she's a power of attorney of somebody over there, has to go help set them up in a nursing home and stuff. So they're going to do that for the remainder of this week. What else is going on? Do we need to announce anything? Let's start with our live audience, and then we'll turn to Zoomers here. Yes?
Piper Craft has had some issues,
Well, I don't know the details. You just mentioned it Sunday.
broke 2 fingers. Excuse me, she broke 2 fingers, and they were afraid she was going to have surgery. Marcia says that she's not going to have surgery, but she's going to be in a full cast, and then what happens after?
For 4 weeks.
For 4 weeks.
Okay.
In a buddy bandage or something.
Okay, so Piper Craft broke 2 fingers. Was this after your prayer request on Sunday, or was this part of that?
I think it was after that.
Okay.
It was concerning her grandfather.
Okay.
On Wade's side.
Yes. So Piper broke 2 fingers, no cast, but they will be
Cast, no surgery.
cast, no surgery. So we'll be, that's going to be tough on her and the family getting by with a hand that doesn't operate as it should. But all right. Anybody else here? Yes, ma'am.
Update on the O'Briens that I asked her for
Yes.
on Sunday. The mom is in the hospital, last I heard. I asked her any updates today, but I haven't heard back from her yet. The family is getting a little worse. They were kind of all bedridden, but the mom is currently in the hospital, last I heard. She's doing better now that she has meds.
Okay.
For the symptoms, but she's lost a lot of weight, and so she really needs to just take it easy, get a lot of rest, and the next step is trying to get her to kind of keep food down.
Yeah.
Without IV or anything.
So Sarah mentioned on Sunday about the O'Brien family. Both of them have COVID?
All five.
All 5 family members have COVID. The mom is now in the hospital, but receiving the medication she needs to receive, and hopefully will start making a turn for improvement. But that's kind of scary for a family, so we want to be praying. But where do they live? Just what state?
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay, they live here. All right, all right, all right. Yeah, somewhere between 30 minutes and 3 hours from here, so that's good.
Also, one of my coworkers, her husband, went in for a stress test, and they thought everything was fine, and then the doctors called back, and they were like, hey, we need this feedback. Pretty soon you have an appointment with the cardiologist. And
Okay.
so they think he has some blockage, and so they're gonna do some appointments to try to figure out if there is blockage, and if so, how to fix it. So she's pretty stressed.
Okay, a coworker's husband had a stress test that they thought was good, but then they called them back in for, it wasn't as good as they thought, so they're going to have to do some things, okay? All right, we've had kind of a stressful day in my house. So Brenda's going to need cataract surgery on her other eye. And so we've played well with our insurance company and found a doctor that is part of our insurance plan. And she waited 2 months for the appointment and went today and found out that the doctor's part of the insurance plan, so the surgeon is part of the insurance plan, but where he does surgery is not part of the insurance plan. So I've been on the phone most of the day because it is, for these kind of surgeries that are kind of outpatient, one and done, quick surgeries, most time done at surgery centers, there are few that our insurance, that honors our insurance. Plenty of doctors, not a lot of surgery centers. I asked them, what good is a surgeon that doesn't have a place to perform surgery? But they were not too impressed with my comments. But I will say to all of you that if I got frustrated at all, I always made clear that they understood that I was a preacher at the First Baptist Church. So that was always helpful. All right, Zoomers, I can't see all of you, but do you have any prayer needs or good news or anything you want to share tonight? All right. All right. This is Lindsay and Heath's 9-year anniversary. I want to move the mic over there so maybe they can hear here. So today is, so happy anniversary to the 2 of you. That's not working. So Heath was working on a great joke, and then Miles spoke up and, all right. All right, congratulations to Heath and Lindsay on their anniversary today. We're on? Okay, hold on. Let me try this here. Give me a minute here. Okay, can Zoomers hear us?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, we're back to normal, or as normal as chaos can be. So that's good. Any other news or announcements from the Zoom guys? All right, I was told by some people that I need to pause because there's a delay when I speak and then when you hear, so I try to give enough pause there so you can have time to respond. Yes, ma'am.
One more thing.
Yes.
So safe travels for me there and back when I come home.
And you're not going at all?
No.
Okay, Peter's staying here.
Pray that I can feed all the pets.
And remembers everything.
All right.
What time is the party?
Never.
I'm leaving Friday, coming back Tuesday, I'm leaving here Sunday and Monday.
No, if they're going to be gone that long, let's just have one long party, okay?
You have to feed the animals.
All right, let's have a prayer and then we'll get started. God, we're thankful for tonight, for our Bible study together. Thankful that we got this Zoom worked out and everything's back to normal. We just ask you to bless all of our members, live streaming or live in the auditorium or on Zoom, all the prayer needs that we lifted up and we mentioned tonight. We pray that you provide healing and safety and comfort for people as they're going through some stressful times. We're thankful for Heath and Lindsay and their anniversary. We ask your blessings upon them for many, many more years in their happy marriage. And we ask you to be with us tonight as we look into our story, and we pray that we come away with something that really encourages us and blesses us. Amen. All right, so let's begin with this. What kinds of goals do you set for yourself that you know when you make them they're going to be difficult to achieve? Anybody here in the live audience ever set goals for yourself?
Reading the Bible every day.
Reading the Bible every day is a goal, yeah. And
Every single goal that I've ever set ever in my life.
all goals are challenging to. So, we've discussed this before, that sometimes people know how that process is going to go so much that New Year's resolutions, no more, right? Because you've lived long enough, you know how that's going to turn out. How about you Zoomers? Any goals that you set for yourself that you know are going to be difficult?
Paying off millions of dollars in student loans. Billions of dollars. Not billions, but it feels like millions.
Okay, I thought he said billions of dollars with a B. So, yeah, paying off student loan, that kind of overwhelming sense of debt that you go, there's no way I can get that paid off. So, whatever your goals are, what kind of external forces outside of yourself, external forces really bite at your heels to motivate you just to quit and give up on those goals? What kind of things outside of yourself just makes you say, forget it? Well, for me, it's losing weight, and it is that bag of Oreos in the pantry, right? Because I say this to myself, I know you guys never do this, but I say this to myself, I'm just going to have 2 Oreos, and that is not going to violate my diet that much, and, I'm going to be okay. Well, what I mean by that, I'm going to have 2 at 7 o'clock and 2 at 8 o'clock and 2 at 9 o'clock and 2 more at 10 o'clock. So, yes, we have some external forces that work on that. How about this? And let's pick on losing weight again for that. Do you find that when bad things happen to you, you get yelled at by your boss, you have a fender bender in your car, whatever it is, you began that day determined to lose weight, but when something like that happens to you outside of you, then all of a sudden it's like, forget it, I'm just going to go get that ice cream. You guys ever do that? Yeah, something outside of you, bad happens, and it causes you to say, I don't care about the goal, I just want comfort now. That's why they call it comfort foods, right? Because we go to those foods whenever we're feeling depressed or intimidated or mistreated or something, and we devour those kinds of foods. Well, the Christians in Peter's day were in need of comfort. So can you remember what all was going on in their time period? Now, they were in Asia Minor. They weren't experiencing maybe what Peter was experiencing in Rome, but the kind of trials or persecutions they were experiencing might have included what kind of things?
Weren't they communicating with each other?
Sure. It was mentioned, weren't they communicating? Yeah, we have this mistaken view of the ancient world, like, oh, if it was across 200 miles, they didn't know what was going on, but they did. There were ships going back and forth and communication going back and forth all the time. So, yes, and we did mention that even though Asia Minor was not facing the horrific persecutions that Rome was experiencing, and maybe Peter was experiencing, surely they heard about it, all right? Surely they heard what was going on there. But what kind of things might you experience in Asia Minor as persecution or trials or hardships?
Well, you have the various religious gods.
I think we had mentioned previously about sort of the economics of the time, that you were kind of the in or the out group kind of thing, and that Christians could find themselves being in the out and ostracized a little bit economically.
Yeah, there was a close tie-in between state religions or community religions and how business got done. So if you weren't playing the religious game, you weren't part of the economic machine. You were outside of that. Steve was going to say something, maybe the same thing, I don't know.
Well, mine was just focused on, if a significant part of the population that you're in is worshiping a Greek god or goddess, then, there's already an issue with, who's worshiping the right God. Yeah. They felt, well, remember we mentioned last week that they were thought of as being unpatriotic. That phrase that Tacitus uses, which would probably be applied to Asia Minor too. They were people who hated humanity, all right? And that just meant that they were just evil people with evil intent and weren't good citizens, okay? So, yeah, they probably felt, I could imagine a Christian family, husband or wife coming home at the end of a day, business deal fell through, wasn't allowed into the country club, whatever else was going on, coming home and just saying, it was a bad day, I want some ice cream, all right? And, the other spouse would say, well, you're on your diet, you wanted to lose weight, and they said, forget losing weight, I just had a bad day, I just want something to make me feel good, and this is what it's going to be right now. So that's kind of where we are now, and really what we're going to be looking at tonight, and that is how do we keep our heart and mind on the goals of what we want to accomplish, even when a lot around us is urging us just to go for the quick fix of happiness in a troubled moment. All right? So we're going to start with verse 13 of chapter 1 and go through verse 2 of chapter 2. It wasn't totally arbitrary, but my stopping points are not the same. Everybody doesn't have the same stopping points here, all right? But I just chose verse 2 as a stopping point for this section tonight. So Peter begins with the word therefore. What's the import of the word therefore? Why should we pause at therefores and think for a moment? You're asking what's the therefore?
What's previously been said.
Yeah, what's previously been said. As Steve said, what the there is for, okay? Yeah, so anytime you see a therefore in the Bible, if you don't know why therefore is being spoken, you need to stop and go back and read a little bit again, all right? So Peter's saying therefore, so let's kind of review for a moment what he said earlier. Verse 3 through 4 of chapter 1, Peter says they have a rich inheritance in belonging to Christ. Verses 6 through 7 says the struggles that you're facing are temporary, but they're going to make you stronger. They validate your faith. Before they came along, you spoke in aspirational tones about your faith, but when you stand against persecutions, you are validating, you're proving true your faith. And then verse 10 through 12, Peter says, don't be mistaken how special of a place that you have. I mean, prophets wanted to know about what was going to happen. Angels longed to look into these things, but you are getting to experience them. So what you are going through right now, what you are experiencing in Christ is the very thing that generations of people would have paid dearly to know about and to experience themselves, and you're right in the middle of it. So, therefore, because you have a rich inheritance and the struggles are making you stronger and you are in a special place right now in the kingdom of God. Peter says in verse 13, I'm reading from the NIV. Does most people have the NIV out here? Yes? Okay. I'm reading from the NIV. In this verse, it's not my favorite translation, so we'll share another one in a minute. But he says, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. So, and the reason I don't like this translation is because it speaks in passive terms, with your minds alert and fully sober. The New Living Translation says this, and I like this one here. So prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control. Those are action terms, okay? Here's a bullet point list of things to do. Prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control. So let's talk for a moment about what is meant when he says, prepare your minds for action. What do you think he's talking about there? Temptation. So do what with temptations? What? Prepare yourself, okay?
Always be prepared.
Boy Scouts, always be prepared. Any other comments? Zoomers?
Look, your persecution is coming from being based upon what your lifestyle is to what's considered the norm where they live. There'd be a strong push to try and, well, if I fit in, then life gets easier.
Yeah.
You know? It gets, in some ways, it gets better.
Sure.
It's an easier path.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? That drive within human nature is primal with us. Tell me what I have to do to stop this discomfort, and I will do it, right? We grow up in America we grew up in an America that we thought was a Christian nation. And so there was very little need on some level to prepare your minds for action. Because for many people, the thought was, and it was obviously incorrect, but the thought was, if you're just a good American, you're also being a good Christian, right? So just do what comes natural. Just be a good American, and you'll by nature be a good Christian. There's no need to prepare for that. There's no need to. You'll like this. The Greek behind this, and probably the Revised Standard Version has this. Here's what the Greek says. Gird up the loins of your mind. Now, we're using a weird illustration here, but in the ancient day when men wore tunics, if you were going to climb a hill, one of the first things you'd do is you'd take that tunic and you'd pull it up between your legs and you'd tuck it into your sash or your belt. You would gird up your skirt and tuck it in so that you could make the path. And he's using that kind of language, gird up the loins of your mind, okay? So be prepared, be alert, be attentive. When you are in an environment that is blatantly, obviously anti-Christian, all right? So you go to a wild house party, or you're engaged in a shady business deal, or whatever it is, okay? You can fill in the blanks. If you are genuinely striving to be a Christian and you are thrust into that environment, how do your senses respond to that? Do you just kind of say, oh, this is normal business? Okay, yeah, try to get away from it, okay? With me, so let me give you this example here. Early on in COVID, Flo had enough of the house, of the basement. I mean, we would unlock it occasionally, but she still had enough of the basement. So she said she wanted to go out to eat. Brenda was gone. I said, yes, we'll go out to eat. I'm cautious, we'll go out to eat. Well, stupid me, it was a Friday night, and she wanted to go to Longhorn, something like that, okay? And we went, and it was safer then than it is now, but at my alert level then, it was not nearly as safe as I wished it to be. And we sat down and we had a meal together, but all during the meal, I was looking around, I was on edge. I was not good company that night, okay? I felt this need to protect, right? And so I'm looking around, the waitress comes and the mask is below her nose and she's talking. It's like you want to say, get away from me. And there's an empty table near us and I'm just looking, no one should sit there, and I'm never that alert at restaurants, never that alert. But I was hyper alert. Why? Because I sensed that the risk was huge, right? And that sense of Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas any longer, causes you to be, alert. Now I'm not really talking about being fearful, although that comes up in a few minutes, but I'm just talking about that alertness. And one question is this: how alert are you? How alert are you spiritually to the situations around you, the risks around you, the temptations around you? How alert are we? And I think sometimes we're just, we're not, because we're thinking in the moment, right? We're thinking right now, and we're not anticipating those things, and so we're not preparing ourselves for them. So he said, prepare your minds for action. Be alert and be focused. And then he says, you should be fully sober. So what does that mean? Don't get drunk? Anybody on Zoom? I'm talking way too much here, but anybody on Zoom want to chime in on fully sober?
Just being clear-minded, level-headed, that kind of thing.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Sober is oftentimes, and even in ancient times, was associated with the opposite of drunkenness. But in the Bible, sober is oftentimes used in a much broader sense of being clear-headed and being able to make decisions, and that kind of thing. So I'm going to use a word it is the word that speaks to me out of this section here, and that is intentional. Live intentionally. Make decisions with intent rather than just what comes easy or what comes natural. I got to tell you, I'm sure I'm the only one that does this, so don't raise your hands. But I will get up in the morning and decide today I am going to really be serious about my diet. Okay? Today is the day. And do you know what? By the time lunch is over, I'll go, I can't believe I ordered that. I can't believe I ate that. I was going to be good today. What? Just a few hours. How in the world did I? That is living without intent. Do you see that? That's living, in the moment, I go, oh, that was good. I'll take one of those. But that's not intentional, is it? That's just whatever strikes me in the moment as, hey, that'd be fun. Let's try that. So this is, the old joke is that in Redneck, Georgia, where I'm from, the one way you know something stupid's going to happen is somebody says, hey, Bubba, watch this. So it's like, I just thought about this. This would be fun. And no sense of consequences or value, no decision, no thoughtfulness went into it, no alertness, no sobriety. In fact, probably some lack of sobriety, from alcohol. But people just make decisions, and they are costly. So, all right. So he says, live intentionally. And then he says, I'll use this phrase, keep your focus. Keep your focus on what you want to accomplish. So somebody read the latter part of verse 13. Set your hope, what? Go ahead. You can read the whole thing there.
Fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ.
All right. Set your hope fully on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed as his coming. We keep bringing up examples of our own lives, but how many times do we make decisions based upon that being our ultimate goal? I mean, sometimes people make decisions about jobs. Should I take this job? Should I not take this job? What kind of things do you consider oftentimes when you're looking for advancement? What kind of things do you weigh? Money, yeah. What's the salary like? Good salary? Yeah, I think that may be something I'll do. What other things? Benefit package? Huh? Say it again?
New responsibilities.
New responsibilities, yeah. More challenging responsibilities. Martha, did you say something?
I said benefits.
Yeah, when I was in my 20s, I could have cared less about benefits. But now they're pretty precious, So yeah, what are my benefits? And not that those things are not of concern, but here's the question. Do we ever ask ourselves, is this job going to be improve, or will it be a hindrance to my spiritual growth and spiritual life? And I got to tell you, you'd think a preacher would consider that, but as I've looked at jobs in the past, that wasn't on the top of my list, right? We look at other things. Why do you think we don't entertain that question?
Because of your focus.
Okay.
Sometimes when you're based on the environment that you're in, if you're in worship, or you're in a Bible class, or Bible study, your focus is on something spiritual. When especially if you're in a secular job, your focus is on what is my task list, what do I need to get done today so that, my management is satisfied with my, effort.
Okay. I don't know if the Zoomers can hear that, but Steve drew up the distinction between sometimes we've separated those worlds from our spiritual world to our secular world, and we consider spiritual things when making spiritual decisions, and I'm using those terms poorly, okay? But the decisions that we think are spiritual, we'll consider spiritual things, but things that are secular, we just weigh them based on secular.
It's the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
Defines what your focus is.
And I got to tell you, one thing for me is this. There's part of me that just assumes the spiritual is going to take care of itself. All right? My salary bump is not going to take care of itself. My corner office is not going to take care of itself. But my spiritual life will take care of itself. Now, let me ask you, is that living intentionally? It's not, is it? Because we just say, hey, it'll work itself out. And that's a risky place to be. Yes.
Oh, sorry, go.
Intentional, I think to live intentionally is very difficult
mainly because we are consumed with the things that are immediate around us. You know, the things that are happening, the people, the situations, the budget, the jobs, whatever. And those things can be all-consuming. Not that they're bad, but the mind can only sort so much. And intentional living, the way I kind of think about that is to be, or to try to be aware every day of trying to put the spiritual and to filter everything else through that. And that is extremely difficult. I think it's for me, maybe for you. I certainly think for the audience that Peter was writing to, simply because the default is what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my energy, my time, my focus is going to be. Unless I am intentional about the bigger picture or what I'm really here for, what I'm about. And so it's a whole reversal of perspective.
Yeah.
Filter.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Good point. Heath, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that I think faith is an aspect of it that, you know, I mean, we need to be intentional about it, but like I can speak from my experience of moving up here to St. Louis. I had faith that the spiritual side of it would work out. Now, you know, does that mean that I was being less intentional than I should have been with my own, you know, personal choices? Maybe. That could just be, it could be bad that we default to, it'll work itself out, everything will be fine at the end. But I do think that faith is kind of on the other side of it.
You know, and we're going to look at that in just a minute, Heath. I'm glad you brought that up because there's some language in here in a few verses that we don't like, but it's important for us to hear those parts. And it's not all of one and not the other, but we tend to default to the other and not what we're going to bring up right now. So let me give you, from what Peter says here, are reasons we should be intentional in our living. All right? So look at verse 17. This is chapter 1, verse 17. He says, since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. So, what do you get out of that verse? What's Peter trying to say here?
This is temporary.
Okay, this is temporary. Good point. Okay, there's the first word that we don't like. So, Benny Mae, you can't talk for the rest of the class because you said the word that we don't like, okay? Benny Mae said that we're going to be judged. And I know as well as you do that there is a continuum of church cultures that breeds fear and breeds liberty, okay? But my sense is that we default on the message of liberty, okay? On mercy and forgiveness and whatever. I'm not against that, but let's remember that God is going to judge. And it's not just he's going to judge those people, because what does he say here? He judges each person's work what? Impartially. So let me ask you this. Whenever you feel a sense of entitlement based on who you know or who you're related to or whatever, whenever you feel a sense of entitlement, what does that do to your determined focus? Is that a tough question? Did I?
Shifts it to self.
Say it again?
It shifts to oneself.
Yeah, it shifts to oneself. Here's the thing about it. So, I had a friend of mine who was an FBI agent. Good guy. But he drove everywhere, to a case, to the donut shop, to church at 90 miles an hour. Okay? Because he had a sense of entitlement, right? He had to get to St. Louis to conduct business, FBI business, I get it, 90 miles an hour. Was there any looking over his shoulder for cops and radars? It was all this sense of, if I get pulled over, what am I going to do? Flash my badge, I'm good to go. There was no sense of responsibility there because it was overwhelmed by the sense of entitlement, right? Whenever we feel like, oh, God's a good, merciful, kind, forgiving God. I'm better than most. I'm special, And again, all those things that I just said have some truth in them. But what's dangerous about that is when it gives me a sense of entitlement. I don't have to watch how I treat people or watch my intake of evil through the media waves or, I don't have to do any of that. And let me tell you, preachers are not immune to this. In fact, preachers are probably sometimes most affected by it because if anybody can muster up a sense of entitlement, the guy who stands up here can, right? Because the things that I say are like, hey, right on, So it's kind of like, so the things I do at home, that's no big deal. I'm not perfect. If people knew what I did, they wouldn't like it. They may, but it's overcome by my positive message. Can you see that taking place?
I think in general, Christians try to do good deeds. That's just part of the makeup of being, part of a Christian family. The question is what's motivating the deeds? Is motivating the deeds so that I can earn my way to heaven, so God is subject to me in that I've done enough good things that he has to save me?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it because God has saved me as a gracious gift, and that motivates me to do good things? That's the difference between entitlement, which is the former.
Yeah. And as Steve mentioned that, it doesn't change. In both situations, what happens is the same thing. God says we're recipients, but it's a matter of whether I feel entitled to that and therefore I am free to do what I want to do, or whether I feel gracious about that and I am alert and sober-minded in how I live my life. So, yeah, and I looked over this several times in several different translations, trying to see if I was missing this, but I'm convinced Peter wrote this verse here to tell people, do not treat this haphazardly. God is going to judge everybody's heart, mind, and behavior. And you are not immune to that judgment just because you attend the Maryland Heights Church of Christ. So Heath, here comes the other part that we don't like, because at the end of that it says, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. And I got to tell you, the NIV, and probably rightly so, but I do want to give them a heads up here. The NIV added a word here. Do you know what word they added? They added the word reverent. Because we don't know what to do with fear in the Christian culture. In fact, we love the passages that say, perfect love casts out all fear, okay? So, and we don't want people to be afraid. And I definitely don't want people to always feel like, oh, I hope I'm saved. I don't know, it's a toss-up. I just hope I don't want that kind of uncertainty. So there is a desire throughout Scripture to provide peace and assurance, and so I'm not diminishing that at all. But Old and New Testament alike continue against my better wishes to use this word fear here. And I think we are right when we say, well, it had a meaning of more of respect. I'm not diminishing that. But I got to tell you, sometimes, and this is one of those times, when I think Peter is referencing a kind of respect that also comes with a measure of fear. So my question to you is this: how can we, is it proper and appropriate to intermingle assurance and fear? I mean, is that appropriate, or should we just side with one or the other? I'm stopping right now just to give you some time to breathe on that for a minute, and you can say something. Klosky probably relates to this. It's hard to preach a sermon about the need to fear.
If Peter is messaging what is going to happen to these groups of people here in the near future, then it makes sense that he has been trying to build them up in preparation for what they're going to experience. And it's better to fear the God that has saved you than the Caesar who could persecute you and execute you.
Did you guys hear that on Zoom? That's worth preaching on right there. It's better to fear the God who saves you than to fear the Caesar who's going to persecute you. I think that may be a good way to measure that. Yes, there is a legitimate component of fear in this awe that we feel for God, all right?
Jesus said, don't fear the one who can kill the body, fear the one who can destroy the spirit.
Good, yeah. I should have had you teach this class. That was a good, that was right on target right there. So all of a sudden, if we can buy into this and say, if I can recognize that I am not immune to God's judgment, and the possibility that if I live haphazardly, that I would fall subject to that judgment, and think about the fear I would feel at that point, if I could rest there for a few moments, that might give me the motivation to start living more intentionally. Now, I'm one who firmly believes I would rather motivate you with positive than negative. And Peter's already done that here, right? He said, you've got an inheritance, you've got ancients who've longed to be where you are in a special place. He said all those things. Those are the positive motivations. But I think human beings also on occasion need a dose of the negative motivations. And so I think Peter may be laying some of that out here. Jerry, am I off base here?
Sounds good to me.
Yes, sir. Jerry, that's the least you said in any class right there. Steve.
If I was going to consider what that word fear is, I guess I would insert a synonym for reverent, but that seems to be a word we don't use as often, but an honoring fear.
Yeah, honoring fear.
Yeah. It's like a military guy who was in charge of perhaps thousands of troops, and you don't want to go up that hill, but you honor your commander and your country and everyone else to do it anyway.
And let me tell you why I focus on fear. Because I think in our default mindset to focus on assurance and peace, I think that if we use the phrase reverent fear or even honoring fear and not think about it, we tend to think too casually about what that is. Our default. We're already so far down the road over here. So sometimes it's good for us just to rest for a moment. I don't want you to be in angst at every moment in your life that God may come down and zap you, even though you've committed to live faithfully. But I do want you to know that God is a God of justice and a God who will be feared. And it's important for us to somehow blend that in with the God who is also merciful and forgiving and compassionate and really wants us to be at peace. And again, I think it comes back to the thing Steve said. It's better to fear the God who wants to save you than the Caesar who wants to trouble you.
It dovetails into verse 15, which we didn't comment on, but the one who saved us is holy, and he wants us to be holy, and we honor him in our effort to be holy, not to earn anything.
Yeah.
But that's how we honor him. And if they were going to be persecuted by Caesar, they need to be prepared for that.
Well, and he brings up the passage in verse 15, be holy because I am holy. And I mean, I know I'm being a thorn in your side here, but let me just lay this out. I think a lot of times we take comfort, casual comfort, inattentive comfort with this phrase, well, I'll never be perfect. Now that phrase is true, so I'm not going to deny it, but what does that phrase oftentimes lead us to do or not do?
Excuses us.
Oftentimes when we say, well, I'm not perfect, I'll never be perfect, it is our way of saying, I don't feel the need to be alert and sober-minded in my decision making because God knows I'm not perfect, right? So but we use it as an excuse sometimes. All right, the last motivation that Peter offers in verse 18 and 19. So look at what he's saying here. For you know that it is not with perishable things such as silver and gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you, but with the precious blood of Christ, the Lamb without blemish or defect. So what's the motivation here? To start living intentionally and sober-minded and focused and goal-oriented. What's the motivation here?
The cost of the gift.
Sure. The cost of the gift. I've used this in several sermons. I think only one here, but I'm getting older. I might use it more than once. But there is no greater message than the end of Saving Private Ryan. Do you remember that movie? And the captain, lieutenant, I don't know, who's been injured and mortally wounded, looks up to Ryan and he says, earn this. And all of a sudden, and you could tell from the postscript of that movie that had been a driving force for Ryan, right, in his life. Now, I regret that at the end of his life or in his old age, he's concerned that he didn't do a good enough job of that, okay? We don't want that from Christian people, but you got to respect a man who said, this man died to save me, and I'm going to honor that by being the kind of person that would be honorable for him. And I just get choked up every time I think about that. Well, that's the Jesus story, isn't it? Jesus gave himself for us, the precious lamb, without blemish, without fault, without guilt, for us. Peter's saying, live alert and sober-minded. Well, there's nothing that will accomplish that more than to say, never forget what Jesus did for you.
Scott?
Yes.
That's the difference between have to religion or faith and want to religion or faith. Mm-hmm. I would do this not because I have to. And that's what it's an internal change. I will do this because of the price that was paid and I want to.
Yes.
And I think even that idea puts the whole concept of fear or of respect into perspective. It's not unhealthy, it's just that my life is nothing more than a thank you note to a God that loved and a Jesus that redeemed. And it's a whole, it's a mindset. Have to religion is not the same as want to religion.
Very good point.
And that's a hard thing.
You know, and religious movements that preach only fear and judgment get a lot of obedience, but it's out of have to, you know. So if I will read into Peter's writings here, I will say this: he does mention fear and judgment, but he concludes with the gift we've received. All right. If Peter's building to a point, the point he wants to leave you with ultimately is what's been done for you is worth your sober alertness as you conduct your life. But I got to tell you, I'm the kind of person, I always benefit from a little bit of fear sprinkled in with a little bit of have to sprinkled in with my want to. Okay.
And it's also consistent with his Jewish upbringing, which was, God is a God to be feared, that he will be judging you.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you've done everything you can, that you've done the right sacrifices, and so on to honor him so that those sins are forgiven. And now he sees the completion of God's plan through Jesus Christ. And he says, basically, thank you, Lord, for providing, this exclamation point. I like that phrase that Lynn used to end this passage. Yes, fear and respect, for God, but at the same time recognizing what he's done for us.
Good point. Very good point. It's not until verse 22 that Peter starts laying out exactly what this alert behavior and self-control behavior would look like. But he does kind of paint pictures in the positive and the negative, what to do, what not to do. So in verse 22, what does he say to do here? Love each other sincerely. Love one another deeply from the heart. That kind of, this is the kind of behavior you should be focused on. To love other people deeply from the heart. And that's always easy when people are lovable and difficult when people aren't. But Peter didn't differentiate between them, just leveled to us what we should be doing. And then he gives the opposite of that. So the opposite of loving deeply might be summed up in what he says in chapter 2, verse 1. So look ahead there a little bit. Rid yourselves of what kind of things? Malice, deceit, hypocrisy, envy. And do you see that these may be the flip side of the first expectation? Love one another deeply. Do not be somebody who practices malice or has malice toward others or is deceitful or hypocritical or envious or that you slander other people. I mean, doing those kind of things is not loving somebody deeply from the heart. It's curious to me because the things that Peter mentions right here all deal with their communal experience. Okay? So I just wonder how helpful is a healthy church community in helping you stay on track and focused in your spiritual life? How helpful is a healthy church community in getting that done for you? Very. Maybe I should ask the opposite question. How detrimental is a toxic Christian community in keeping you from staying on track or accomplishing or reaching for your goals? And varies the answer there too, right? Yeah. I mean, I haven't been in too many toxic Christian communities. I've met some toxic Christians before, but never a whole community that was like that. But could you understand why somebody in a toxic Christian community could just quit?
They have.
Yeah.
By the thousands.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have been around long enough where we go, hey, that's not the only church, that's not the only place. But for people who don't know anything broader than that, if this is what it means to be a Christian, I don't want any part of it. And all of a sudden, not only do I lose my community, now all of a sudden I lose my motivation. Well, why not do this? Why not behave in this way? Why not put myself first? These people have been mistreating me for so long. Now I'm going to live just all for me. Could you see that happening? So Peter wants to make sure that this community is a sustaining Christian community for what they're facing. That they may have bad time at work or bad time in town or bad time in the community, but they can come in this church family and they go, okay, I am loved, I'm appreciated, I'm valued, I'm encouraged to stay the course and to complete the goals that I have set out, to be more like Christ in my life. All right, it's 8 o'clock. I'll conclude with this. In verse 23 through 25, Peter mentions this idea of imperishable many times. What you have is imperishable. It will endure. It's going to last. Do you remember what he said about the trials you're facing in the very first few verses of 1 Peter? What's the duration of the hard times that you're going to face? Temporary, yes. Hard times are temporary, but now, repeated time and again, enduring, lasting, imperishable. You cannot, this will be here no matter what. And again, sometimes even church people come and go. Church relationships struggle, I get that. But what Peter wants you to know is the God behind it all and his promise to sustain you is infallible. It is nothing can take that away from you if you submit to his authority. And he just wanted people to know that no matter what's going on in your community, maybe even in your church family, maybe just even in yourself, God's commitment to keep you on this journey, if you're willing to step out with him, his commitment is unwavering, and we just need to step out in faith and follow him. All right, next week we'll pick up there from verse 3 in 1 Peter. Thank you guys, Zoomers. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you have a great week. This coming Sunday, I'll announce it now, but we'll give you more details later. May the 12th, we're going to have our first Prime Timers luncheon again. We're going to do it in a different way, but we're going to meet for Bible study in the auditorium and then do a catered box dinner down in the fellowship hall. But that means that for all our Prime Timers, and we'll let you know this Sunday, you're going to have to register ahead of time and let us know what food you want, because if you don't, you can watch us eat, okay? So, but that's going to be on May the 12th. We started that at 10 o'clock? Ramona, 10 o'clock? It's been so long, I can't remember. 10 o'clock, okay. So May the 12th, 10 o'clock, be kind of putting that on your calendar. We're going to start those up again, month to month. We'll kind of play it by ear, but we're going to do one in May. All right, thanks guys for coming. Let's close with a prayer. God, we're thankful for your calling, and we pray that in our lives that we will live intentionally and focused and with the ultimate spiritual goals in mind. And whether the things that test our allegiance come from outside of us, whether they come from inside of us, or whether they're just part of a struggle that we have with our own church community, help us not to grow weary, but help us to keep focused, knowing that even though humans will fail, you are faithful, and you're the one who calls us to a focused, intentional, goal-oriented life of serving you. So help us this week make decisions with those long-range objectives in mind. knowing that you will bring us to those days. And we ask this through your Son. Amen. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night from live audience, from our live stream, and from our Zoomers. Thank you a lot. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Bye. Happy anniversary, Carrie.
Yes.
9 whole years and you haven't killed each other yet. Yes.